Oh, in this video, I'm going to share a recipe for asparagus fried rice. Asparagus should be available soon in Central PA at the grocery stores and farmers markets. Usually it comes into season in late April and runs through mid-June. So you should be able to find it soon, if not already. If you'd like to make this asparagus fried rice recipe, these are the basic things that you will need, and I will offer some suggestions of variations that might include other ingredients if you have them and like them. If you're going to get fresh asparagus, then I recommend to prep it, as I've said in other vegetable videos, that you use a bath of 50-50 vinegar and water. I especially recommend this if you are using conventionally grown asparagus, because that will help to remove as many of the pesticides as possible. If you're using organic asparagus, you could just soak it briefly, but at least a few minutes if it's conventionally grown, and then rinse for 20 to 30 seconds. And then you can see how your asparagus has been prepared for you. Sometimes the farmers cut off the ends and everything is ready to go. If the ends are a bit brown, you could either cut those off or you can snap off the end, depending on how the farmer has prepared the asparagus for market. You might find that there's an end that will snap off easily, or if those ends have already been snapped off, you might just cut the very end off if it's looking a bit brown. You'll know if you just take a hold of this asparagus and snap the end a little bit. If it pops off, then those ends haven't been snapped yet. And then I recommend for a fried rice recipe that instead of just roasting the whole spear, that you cut the asparagus into 2 to 3 pieces lengthwise. It really depends on your preferred size for your fried rice. And then also, if the asparagus is very thick, you'll need to cook it a bit longer, especially if you like your asparagus to be tender. If you would like to make sure that it is as tender as possible, you could even just blanch it for 2 to 3 minutes. So either steam it or boil it for 2 to 3 minutes and then run it under some cold water before you stir fry it. But that's not necessary. You can just cook it until it reaches the desired tenderness. So these are the ingredients in actual amounts for the asparagus fried rice. I recommend that you cook your rice ahead of time and let it chill, even if it just chills in the fridge for several hours till it starts to feel cool instead of being hot. It's better for the fried rice than if you just go ahead and cook it. Although if you just need to get everything done, that's fine. So these are the ingredients, and some of them are optional. I do recommend mushrooms if you are skipping meat of any kind, because the mushrooms add something to it. I like to put mushrooms in a lot of my stir-fry dishes because they give you something hearty, but they also add some flavor. So you could use some mushrooms, and the way I have offered the recipe here, I've suggested either using mushrooms, or if you're going to use some meat or tofu, you could use that instead. But you could also do a little bit of each. The main thing is to think about how much you have in the way of vegetables and meat combined. So you're looking at about probably 2 cups of mushrooms or meat or tofu, and then the asparagus usually makes about 1.5 to 2 cups when it's been chopped, and a carrot or 2 is probably only 1/2 cup to a cup, depending on how big it is. So you're probably looking at between maybe 4 to 5 cups. So you can think about, just mixing things up and measuring it out that way. If you like to measure things and just say, these are the ingredients I'm using, and they all equal about 5 cups, somewhere around there. And then if you have it, a bell pepper is nice for some flavor and some color, and peas are good for fried rice as well for protein, especially if you're skipping the meat, but they also add some color. So these are all of the ingredients, and I will say a couple of things about some of these optional things at the end. If you like adding different flavors or experimenting, you can add things like curry powder or a chili garlic sauce or some teriyaki or hoisin. These will give some different flavors to your fried rice than just a basic fried rice recipe. So these are the instructions. It's an easy fried rice recipe. You just heat the oil and then you want to saute the onion until it's tender and then add the garlic. And if you're using them, the chilies and the ginger, just cook them for a couple of minutes to start making them fragrant. And then if you're going to add any meat or tofu, this is the point at which you would want to cook it. Make sure that that is cooked before you add any other vegetables. If you're making something or using pre-cooked, you could always throw that in later. If you want to bake your tofu separately, for example, that's an option. But if you're putting in raw meat or tofu, this is the point to do it. And then once that's done, you can start cooking the vegetables. The asparagus should probably go in first because it needs to cook for probably 3 to 6 minutes. It depends on how thick the asparagus is and also how tender you would like it to be. But I would say after a few minutes, test it and see and let it keep cooking until it's just about reached your preferred tenderness. And then add the carrots and cook those for a few minutes. If you're going to use mushrooms, this is the point to add them, but you can skip them. And then add the bell pepper and that cooks up quickly. And so do the peas because they're likely already cooked. And then what I like to do if I'm using eggs is to make a well in the center, so push everything aside. And I like to use a little sesame oil. So I'll add like a teaspoon of sesame oil to the center of the pan, and I'll cook the eggs in that. If you don't have or don't like sesame oil, you can just add a little bit more of your neutral oil or your olive oil, depending on what you're using, and just cook the eggs until they get to the desired consistency, and then stir them and mix them in with the vegetables. And you can add your rice and just let it cook for a few more minutes until the rice is warmed. And then once everything is in there and cooked, you can add some soy sauce for sure. But if you'd like to add other flavors, you can add a couple of tablespoons of curry powder, some chili garlic sauce, or some soy sauce or hoisin sauce or teriyaki sauce. I like all of these. It depends on my mood. So you can try different things and see what you like. And if you have them and like them, you can add some freshly chopped spring onions and cilantro at the end as well. So this is my fried rice. I did not add any mushrooms or tofu or meat this time. So it's really just vegetables with protein in the eggs and the peas. And you can see that my bunch of asparagus was between 1.5 and 2 cups chopped. So there's a fair amount of asparagus in this fried rice, but it's also got some color. I've got some purple and some orange carrots, and I've got a yellow bell pepper, and then the peas and the asparagus give it some green. I also added some teriyaki sauce to this one, which gives it just a nice light sweetness. So that is the fried rice recipe. You can try it a number of different ways. If you get your asparagus and when you get it fresh, you're not ready to make fried rice, you can always blanch and freeze your asparagus and then pull it out later to make a quick fried rice when you need a really easy meal. It's also nice to freeze that asparagus so that you have it later in the year into the fall and maybe early winter when there aren't as many vegetable options. So I hope that this recipe is something that you enjoy and that you're able to enjoy the asparagus while it's in season here soon.